We are the group EE Gamers or EEG Gamers. It consists of 5 people from Tilburg University. Most of us are bachelor's cognitive science and AI students, with the exception of Bas and Victors. Victors is not a student at the moment, and Bas is a master student. I'm Spatika, this is Guido, and Kasha's off camera, and so are Bas and Victors. So our idea was to try to create a game that incorporates EEG as an additional form of control other than just a keyboard and a mouse. The EEG aspect we wanted to include was to have it focus on an enemy. The game would recognize you're focusing on an enemy via the EEG data. The enemy would get stunned, and the players would see that the enemy would get stunned, thus creating a little feedback loop. Our game plot was that the players would be playing as a stranded adventurer that has been separated from their adventuring party deep within the red-stoned desert through unexplored ruins that are littered with dangerous enemies. The main objective of the game would be to navigate the terrain, track down enemies and eliminate them, and return home back to your party safely. So we created a 3D first-person shooter-like game. And with first-person shooters, when you're just walking around, often there'll be 1 enemy, 2 enemies, 3 enemies. Not sure about the rest of you, but personally, when I play first-person shooters, I tend to get very stressed when there are too many enemies targeting me. So in addition to our mouse and keyboard, we wanted to create the EEG that would allow us to stun an enemy, as mentioned before. This would be an additional ability that can be controlled simply by focus. We wanted to use ERP specifically to do that. We have a small video of the first level of our game being played through. Initially, you'll see a small scene that helps us configure, and then you'll see a small playthrough, which will be further explained by Guido.
So I hope you will hear the audio, but this is always a gamble with live streaming. So as you can see here, we just finished training the network, the model that the provides, and here we enter the game. As you can see, I'm walking around as I play, and I can target enemies and move around like in a normal first-person shooter game. What happens is, though, enemies normally, or I can also run around, try to get some distance between us. But here, when I focus on my enemy, it got caged, as you managed to see. I will show that again. Work. Of course, we don't have 100%, but here it's a lot easier. And we imagine, like in more complex games, this is just a small demo so far. It will add another strategic layer to normal gameplay. So there, I locked an enemy, and instead of attacking them, I went to kill another one first. This is our response to most people who are using EEGs in games, just making it for the purpose of rehabilitation, which is absolutely a wonderful goal. But we wanted to provide something more to a healthy gaming experience. So we tried to go this way. Instead of replacing a mechanic with the event-related potentials, we added a new layer. I was in the last clip, you can see I was trying to trigger it, but it doesn't always work. Again, it's just a prototype, but I hope you found it interesting.
Yeah, thank you. So
start it again.
Okay.
Oh, we went to.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Oh, we're not done. I'm sorry.
There's just a little bit more.
We're just having a little issue with our presentation.
Maybe up here.
Yeah, got it. Sorry.
There you go.
Thank you. So we did use Unity for almost all of our process. Thanks to the g.tec built-in, we were easily able to use flickering objects to create certain frequencies to invoke ERP signals. And with the Unicorn cap that could pick up EEG data, we used Unity to kind of interpret that and then trigger the stun or cage mechanic. Initially, we created two separate programs where we had certain members working on developing the actual game, creating the environment, and so on. Whereas the other half worked on trying to get the BCI part to work. And once we had the logic and mechanics figured out, we were able to kind of fuse the two halves to create the demo that we have right now. Reflection. It was personally for me a very exciting thing because I truly enjoyed the idea of having BCI as an additional component rather than a replacement for any pre-existing controls in games. We did have some issues. The first one being when we didn't have internet on our computers that we were going to use Unity on. We managed to quickly kind of resolve that issue by either running Unity on our own personal laptops or by creating a internet bridge via Ethernet cables to the computers and our laptops. We also had some discussions before the hackathon and during about what exactly our game was going to look like. Initially, we were going to do something like Space Invaders, which was a 2D pixel shooter, and then P300, but then we moved to different topics and eventually came to what we have. We had the classic game design issues where certain mechanics wouldn't trigger or the enemies would clip to the floor. But finally, quite like an hour or so before the deadline, we were able to get a working demo with live EEG data. There are several ways we can expand our super cool game. We can add additional levels, use CVEP for a more accurate and faster recognition with EEG, and potentially add more mechanics such as object interaction and external ability triggering. The possibilities of BCI in gaming is still to be explored. And like we mentioned, we can be using additional mechanics for a more immersive experience and just a more unique experience. Thank you very much. We were EEG Gamers.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. Dr. Lee, any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Sorry to interrupt you in the middle of the presentation.
It's all right.
So, I see the quite challenged project. So, what was the main challenge you faced during the hackathon, and how did you overcome it?
There were several challenges. The main one I would say was managing to configure the BCI interface to work with non-standard, let's say, assets. So we used the material that was provided and the mechanic that was provided on the enemies. So the flickering was on the top of the enemy, which was quite tricky to make it work as intended. It took us several hours, lots of hardship, but we managed. It was just, we're not very experienced with Unity, but eventually we managed to make it through. But it was just one of the hurdles.
Yeah.
There are many.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very impressive to get the BCI game working within 24 hours. Thank you very much for the nice presentation.